Nadia Bilchik is a television news anchor, keynote speaker, author, trainer, and communications consultant.
19 number one best-selling
have been nominated and won so many awards throughout your careers.
She has a wealth of experience interviewing and consulting with well-renowned figures, celebrities, and corporations. Nadia speaks on how to get people to like you, trust you, and want to do business with you.
Over the last few weeks, the entire world has been monitoring the treatment of your grandfather, Nelson Mandela. And my job was to introduce it and provide.
With topics like leveraging the power of your personal presence, networking for success, and lighting the fire. Nadia Bilchik.
And today I am joined by actress, activist, playwright, mother, and my friend, Penny Kreitzer. And Penny has just produced a play in South Africa called If a Tree Falls, and it has been much acclaimed. And Penny, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's so much I could talk to you about, but today we're going to focus on this remarkable piece of theatre. And tell us the background of If a Tree Falls and the tragedy that is the reason behind the play.
Well, actually, July 3rd, coming up now, is going to be 9 years since I got a call from my son at about 10 a.m. in the morning. It was July 3rd. And he said, "Mom, put on the TV." And there on the TV, and it was an aerial view, was a massive branch, a 40-foot branch of a California black oak, had dropped and smashed down onto the eating and meeting area, wooden benches and tables at a Jewish summer camp in Yosemite. And it looked like a shipwreck on land because everything was smashed. And underneath on the ticker tape, it said 20 injured, which turned out not to be true. There were 7 injured. And 1 fatality, which turned out to be true. This had happened at 8:25 a.m. And my son started calling. He works for ESPN. He only told me later he did get all the way to the hospital up near in Tuolumne County, near where this had happened.
Because the one fatality was?
My daughter. And the camp never phoned me. I got through 4.5 hours later, and I said, my daughter's Anais, is she all right? I was passed to somebody else who turned out to be the coroner, and I asked him again. I said, my daughter's Anais. By this time, I thought it couldn't be my daughter because I should have been called. I'm her mother, but I wasn't called. And I said, my daughter's Anais, is she all right? And he paused, and she said, no, she isn't. And I just knew it was true. And I said, is she dead? And he said, yes. And that is how I found out 4.5 hours later. And you have to ask yourself, what were they doing for 4.5 hours when they didn't call the mother?
So being you, Penny, and an actress, playwright, producer, you took this extraordinary moment of grief and pain, and I don't want to be trite when I say you turned it into a remarkable piece of theatre, but tell us the journey to If a Tree Falls, which I have only read rave reviews about.
Well, because, and you know, you and I both work with language. When the camp put out on that day, there was a notice which went out, which basically said, a branch fell spontaneously, killing Anais Rittenberg, a tragic act of nature. It caught my attention. Nothing falls spontaneously. There's a reason. How convenient to blame it on nature. And actually, because of my background in theatre, I began to research, and I found that on that day, everybody said, you don't know how a person's going to react when you get this news. So one should never, ever judge. I started Googling, and I found out that indeed there is a phenomenon called summer branch drop. And there's even more of a phenomenon that pertains to California black oaks, and why they will, if they're going to drop a branch, it'll be in the early hours of the morning in June, July, and August. And Anais was killed July 3rd, 8:25 a.m. It was not a freak accident, because when we looked into the emails, internal emails of the camp, they spoke about not having had an arborist coming to check, and that a branch had dropped the year before in June. So it was a known thing. And I just started researching. And the other thing that happened, Anais was a very wild, she loved.
Beautiful, creative young lady.
Yes, and she loved, with a zest for life, and she loved music. And because she wanted me to be more cool, before she was killed, she made me my own tapes of the music she'd chosen. And one of them was Leonard Cohen's final concert. And I listened to that music over and over and over again. And I just, in the night, I would stand with my computer on a bureau overlooking this lake where I live. And the lake in Oakland features in my play. And I would just write and write and write. And most of it was very bad. It was very angry. And then over time, I started to see gems in there. And I worked a bit with Dale Orlando Smith, who is a wonderful playwright in New York, who writes one-woman shows, which she does it all. And she just said to me, Penny, you must learn to write into the core of the moment. And for a while, I didn't know what she meant. And then I learned. And then I hired another woman, Delia McDougall. She worked with me. She's a director and actress in San Francisco, and poured through all this material. And we began to shape it. At first, the play was 3.5 hours long. We've ultimately ended up with a play now that's 90 minutes long. So a lot had to be cut out. And it's taken 9 years. 2 of them were almost lost because of COVID, but I did work with a team based on Zoom, based in Israel, South Africa, Montreal, Berkeley, and we worked on the script with Janice Honeyman,
who is a renowned theatre director in South Africa. It's so interesting, Penny, because those people who are watching who grew up in South Africa, we grew up watching Janice Honeyman as the presenter of a children's show.
Yes.
And knew her well from that. But she does extraordinary pantomimes every year, and she's just remarkable in everything she touches. So the fact that you partnered with her on this very serious piece of theatre, how did you get the cast? And tell us about the cast. I know that everybody except for one character is based on someone real, correct?
Yes. Well, I knew, Janice knew Anais, so she understood her. But I knew always in my gut, Jan is the person. And in 2016, I'd actually gone to South Africa and I worked with her on the script. I also want to say that there was a staged reading in Israel in 2019, directed by Gabi Lev, where we only had 4 actors. I originally wrote it for 3 female actresses playing multiple roles. In Israel, we did it with 4, and now Jan wanted to do it with 7.
So who are the people? You've got somebody who plays Anais.
So we've got somebody who plays Anais, and we've got somebody who plays me, the mother. And actually, this was the first time in Johannesburg that, I didn't have to act. I was not playing the mother, which is very hard. And we got a wonderful actress, Camilla Waldman, incredible actress. And then the very, very top South African actors who everybody wants to work with Janice Honeyman.
Yes.
And
who plays the camp director?
The camp director plays multiple roles. He's fantastic, Robert Hobbs. Multiple roles, but he nails everything.
And of course, the camp director is very much the villain who didn't take full responsibility, who should have seen an arborist. A lot of your anguish and fury and frustration is targeted towards that individual.
Well, it's more than that. It's towards the enablers who enabled him to get away with it. For me, enablers are the most dangerous of people because, you know, there's one character, one of the women at the camp, which actually a wonderful South African actress, Gina Schmopker.
Oh, and Gina, if you're listening to this, so, you know, Penny, the world is small because Gina's sister is married to my brother.
Yes.
So not only is she a wonderful actress, performer, family member, so special person.
So you see in her character that she did try. She tried extremely hard. But I'm talking about the other parents. You know, there was only one child killed. So I stood on my own. And I honestly believe it would have taken 15 children killed if they maybe did something, you know, the same thing that goes on in these shootings in the schools. It shouldn't be happening. Children should be safe. Of course, at the school, you know, these schools, they couldn't have stopped him from coming in. But it's the people who cover up afterwards who are so dangerous.
Right. And then you also speak about something called grief bullies.
Yeah.
And by the way, if anybody is just joining us right now, I'm talking to renowned actress, playwright, author, friend, and theater producer, Penny Kreitzer. Penny is sharing her story, the death of her beautiful daughter in 2013, and the play she's subsequently written called If a Tree Falls, Her Daughter Was Killed by the branch of an oak tree. Is that correct?
Yes. And I just want to be clear. Most people thought it was a twig. It was a 40-foot branch that fell from an 85-foot tree, and it was 45 feet off the ground. And there is a reason why they fall. I mean, I can go into it, but it is in the play.
Let's get to that in a moment. But I wanted to touch on, you experienced this enormous grief. You were the only parent at the camp who had a child die, some were injured. But you speak about something called a grief bully. And unfortunately, we know far too many people, and I certainly do, who've lost a child. And if you know somebody who has or is going through tremendous grief, do you think that grief bullies do this intentionally, or it's just lack of awareness? What are they, and how do we ensure that we never do that?
Well, it is, one of it is lack of awareness, and the other is there's something. What is it that causes somebody to bully somebody else? It's always somebody who isn't feeling good about themselves in some way, and they pick out a vulnerability, you know, and they go after, if it's a fat kid, you know, you're going to go after the fat kid. So what happens here is, I also have a scene in the play. I went to Tanzania, and I have a scene in the play, which is all true. Everything in the play is true, of how the kids were not afraid of me. And they called me Mama Anais, and they asked me, what happened, Mama Anais? And I tell them, and they say, how did it happen? And I tell them, and then they say, sorry. They were not afraid of me. So that is one of the things, if you don't know what to say, tell the truth. Say, you know, Penny, I don't know what to say, but I would love to hear about your daughter. So that's one thing. But the grief, sorry?
Some people are so awkward around people who go through grief, and you weave that into the play. I mean, again, the fact that it started off as 3.5 hours and that you managed to condense it into, I understand, is it 90 minutes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And how do you begin as a playwright how did you introduce that scene? And I wish now we had the visual, and I know you have filmed this play. So perhaps you can tell us afterwards where people can see it or watch parts. Penny, I'm also interested if anybody who's watching us who's interested in a piece of beautiful theater and bringing it to a theater in the United States. So
Yes.
please reach out to us.
I just wanted to, can I just complete?
Yes, please.
With the grief bullies. So there's another lot who come in and say the most cruel thing, like, for example, well, it's a good thing you've got another child. Or I'm so sorry for your loss. You know, it's like
what do you want? It's basically to say, I feel for you. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I'm here should you need me.
Yes, and not to be afraid of me. But people go, I had a cousin who actually came to my house, and it's in the play. She actually wanted to tell me after a number of years, she did this. She said, I want you to know my heart is closed to you. And then she did it again. She wanted me. I mean, it goes.
What does that mean? Does that mean I'm tired of you going on and on?
It could be, and also saying, using a phrase, I don't have the bandwidth. Well, you know, these are the same people who, you know, excuse me, this is my feeling about it, who don't want to hear anything more about what's going on in Ukraine because it's enough already.
Of course.
What I mean?
Or you think about the grief-stricken parents of the children in Uvalde. So now, well, we're moving on, but how does one begin to understand what people are going through and then comfort them?
You just listen. People want to, the bereaved parent, ask them what happened. Ask them to tell you about it. As soon as I feel the person wants to do this, and it's not only me, I want to beat them up. I just like, stop it already. But the person who says, tell me about her, then I'm fine. I can laugh, I can joke, I can go on. And I just want to say, I have a TED Talk. And the TED Talk tells you what happened and also tells you.
I'm going to type that into the chat. Just tell us what the name and the title of the TED Talk is, so I'll type it in.
Okay, you go TED Penny Kreitzer and it comes up.
Okay, carry.
And it's been seen by nearly 78,000 people. I get mothers writing to me all the time, thank you, thank you, thank you. And one of the mothers wrote to me, you are the voice for those who live in silence, because you've got to put on a pretend face, because everybody has had enough. They don't realize that if you just, at the beginning, say, tell me about your child, that's it. Then we know we're okay. And we don't have to go on, you know, moaning all the time or in bereavement all the time. It's just like, I want to tell you that it was such a shock to me, that I called it the second death after the first. It was so bad. And if anything drove me towards suicide and those thoughts, it was this. Now, I also want to share with you that I wrote to people afterwards, and I wrote to Leonard Cohen because listening to his music saved me.
And did you ever get a response?
Immediately, I got a response from his lawyer and friend and colleague, Robert Corey, who wrote back to me immediately to thank me. He sent me a collection of Leonard's poetry, and he read the play. He actually read the play when it was 3 hours long, and he gave me the rights to use the Hallelujah in it, because we had found a recording that Anais had made of herself singing the Hallelujah.
I wish we had access to play that right now. Do you play it in your TED Talk? I can't remember. I know I've watched it.
No,
but did you play
I
any of it?
No, it's pity because I could have sent it to you. I do have it.
Yes, that's why we love doing these live spontaneous things, but I wish we had. So next conversation when we show the actual play. And just, Penny, you know, I think that people look at you with some sense of awe because you have taken this extraordinary tragedy, and because you are creative and because of your mind, and you've channeled this. What was the response at the theater? I know my mother was there in South Africa. She just said it was an extraordinary piece of theater. She said there is a reason that there's something so special about live theater. But I'm just curious, some of the response, what have people said? I know the South African critics have been very laudatory, but people came up to you afterwards and said,
Well, the first group who came was on June 16th, which was National Youth Day to commemorate
Juneteenth. Oh, no, that's June 19th, yes.
The Soweto uprising.
Right.
And
June 19th is Juneteenth. June 16th is another very important day in South African history.
Yes. So my producer told me because it was going to be the first performance, he was going to bring several groups of youth, 15, 16, 17-year-old acting students, whatever. And so we were a little bit nervous because sometimes they laugh at the wrong time. No.
And it's awkward. People often, when there's something very, it's so that, and did they?
No, they laughed when it was funny. And at the end, a spontaneous standing ovation. And I had a talk back. And the questions they asked, and one boy asked me, he actually used the wrong word. He said, "Has this brought you foreclosure?" And I said, actually, in this moment that you've asked me, I've suddenly realized you are the perfect audience to see it the first time, because I wrote it for you. I did not write it. Nadia, our generation has sorely messed up. But I've written it.
In what way do you mean, Penny?
Because look what a mess we live in. You at least you're talking, you speak, you interview people, but look what's going on in our country. It's
very divisive.
So I said to him, I wrote it for the next generation so that they should know when something is wrong and you sense it right in the beginning, you speak up no matter what, because you have your words, you have theater, you have art. And I've got a picture. These kids didn't want to leave. And I've got a picture of them with me. And I just want to add one thing. Their teacher, who kept coming to see the show, she was connected with the theater, Linden, where we did it. She came on about the fourth performance and she said to me, she had tears in her eyes. She said, one of my students came up to me and she said, after seeing If a Tree Falls, I don't want to write what I was writing before. I only want to tell the truth. And so for me, that's what it's for, because if people had had the courage to speak up, Anais would have been alive. They were scared of a bully.
And Penny, other children and other people have died from falling branches. I remember you telling me the story about a family who went camping.
Yes. In Yosemite, 2 years later, on Yosemite grounds, just a few miles from where this camp was, where Anais was, and it's the same climate conditions. Two boys, 12-year-old, were sleeping in a tent underneath a California black oak. The parents and the daughter were in another one. It was August. At 4:30 a.m. in the morning, a massive explosion, and the mother comes out and all she can see is her son's hand. So don't tell me it's a freak accident. This will happen. There are reasons. I did the research with the weather, climate, and the height of the tree and the thickness of the canopy. And in the play, I take them to trial in an underground court where anything can happen. And in this court, there's a surprise witness at the end, and the tree speaks. And the tree has the most moving monologue, and the tree is the only one who apologizes. And the tree is not the guilty one. And so this is another thing. What does it take for people to apologize? Because when it's truthful apologizing, not just, I'm sorry, and not knowing why you did it. And the tree actually goes down on her knees to the mother. And the mother says, no, in my grief dark world, not you, not the tree. You bring grace. And grace and apology for me. If a grief bully my sister, for example, had apologized, Grace, we can heal. If someone from the camp, instead of being so scared of the legal blah, 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 because now there's a play, if they would have come and apologized with humility. And you see, Nadia, I did my research. I also researched atonement in the Jewish laws. And I found out, which I didn't know, and therefore I created a rabbi. He's the only character I created, to share this. Atonement is you first have to own up for yourself. What did I do? Once you know what it is you do, then you go to the person who you've hurt and you apologize, and then you go to God. You don't just straight go to God.
But Penny, have you ever had a formal apology from the camp? Have you ever had, is it something that you pursue legally?
No, you can't. We couldn't sue them. And that's why they weren't calling us for 4.5 hours. They were finding out about their legal liability because Anais was a summer employee. Mm-hmm. She had signed a waiver, and we could not.
They were more concerned. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm talking to playwright, activist, author, producer Penny Kreitzer. Her daughter was killed in 2013 by a tree. And we're saying that the camp where she was killed was more concerned about quickly CYA, let's see what's happening, than calling the mother of a child who died. Penny, that's unforgivable.
It's unforgivable. And also what's worse, and you see, because of my background in theater, I remember conversations. So verbatim, I have in the play the conversation between Anais's father and the camp director. And he says, where is she? And the guy actually said, you're going to hate me. I don't know. And then my ex-husband says, she can't be alone. There has to be a shomer. You of all people know that. What is the matter with you people? And then I found, you see, because what happened, the girls who were injured, there were 7 counselors sitting with Anais. They came in the days immediately afterwards, and they told me what happened. When that branch came down, it brought down electrical wires, and the electricity was going through the leaves of it wasn't strong enough to kill them, but the girls who were lying there were being shocked. Nobody cared about that, and the camp couldn't get to them until the electricity had been turned off. So not only were these girls injured, but they were being shocked. And the camp goes on 2 days later and says you can expect your usual, I won't say the camp's name, experience. And the other thing that happened, out of those girls who were injured, only one girl, her name is Cara, who was found 5 feet away from Anais, her pelvis crushed. She sent her lawyer to say to me, Cara wants me to thank you. Anais saved her life. Because Anais's last words, which I was told by her friends 2-3 days later, but honestly, this is shock. It took me 2 years for it to go in and say, it's her last words. Her last words were, Anais loved nature, in fascination, wow, the tree's falling, run. She warned them to run. She saved lives on that day. And we were never thanked by the camp, just by this one girl, Cara, I don't know her second name, who actually sent her lawyer to thank me. It's been the most deplorable behavior. I've gone to the rabbis. I have a scene in there with a rabbi, actually, Gina plays, and it's verbatim what happened.
So Gina plays
She plays a rabbi from a big synagogue here in San Francisco. Just says it's not his issue. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. I came after this all happened.
Such fear of liability of legality versus humanity.
And it really does, because people noticed that the way the rabbi I created, because I couldn't find a rabbi with such a moral compass. The rabbi, he says, if this camp is safe now, it is because a child was sacrificed. And it's the same for me. Uvalde is safe now. It's not going to happen again because 15 children were massacred. And he says also, how is it that no one comes from behind the walls of institutional posturing to say, we failed her. We failed all our children. And that's what's going on in America as well.
But, Penny, to your point about people who are prepared to be whistleblowers, I mean, what we're seeing in this January 6th investigation, yes, the bravery of some of the people who are coming forward against enormous pressure, you've got to laud them and say, it's very noble, because it's petrifying to do that. How does a Putin get to be a Putin? Because he's got people around him who must see what he's doing is wrong, but who are petrified.
And I will tell you, I have been hated. And to this day, that was also with my cousin coming to do this. Hated because I would not be silent. And I do want to say, not only did I write to Leonard Cohen, but I wrote, Anais was killed a year after Trayvon Martin. And I had read that his mother, Sabrina Fulton, was heartbroken, of course, because he lay in a morgue for 3 days and she didn't know where he was. Do you know, my daughter who had been killed on a Jewish camp, lay in a morgue for 3 days, and I did know where she was. So I wrote to Sabrina, and that's what I said. And I didn't hear from her until 4 years later, just to show you what kind of people they are. Her office wrote to me and said, we are so sorry, your email we could mislabel
you.
And we want to invite you, all expenses paid, to our yearly retreat in Florida, and we want you to join us. And I went there, a South African, white, Jewish mother whose daughter was killed by a tree, and I was welcomed and loved. And I will tell you, there was a table 4 rows deep, a long table. We'd all been asked to bring a framed photo of our child. And there were all these young Black men and a few Black women who'd all been shot, either by police or by friends. And I didn't know where to put my photo. And being South African, I was so polite, I put it in the back of the 4th row. And I was talking to someone and I turned around. It's a pity I don't have the photograph to show you. Someone had moved it to the front row. Anais is right next to Trayvon.
Oh.
And from these people, I was welcomed into their rituals, the preaching, like I was not welcomed into my own community. And that is terrible behavior. And there you are, Trayvon's mother, Sabrina, and all of those mothers welcomed me, and I was healed.
And you say, Penny, I would not be silenced. So let's get to the title of this exquisite piece of theatre that you have written and produced and directed by Janice Honeyman with an unbelievable cast. If a Tree Falls, and the famous saying is, if a tree falls, won't you tell us more about that?
Well, I've got it like this. If a tree falls and everybody hears it, did it make a sound? You bet it did. That's what my play is about. It has it in there, and there's very beautiful writing, because I learned from Dale Orlando Smith so I go into the core of that first scream. And the way Jan staged it with Camilla playing it is so brave, because she's sitting on my red couch and she goes right. There's sections of this. And of course it's lit in a certain way, and it's so raw and so powerful. And I will say, there are people who mostly think, this is madness, but I never thought of this before. Anais started to come through to me. And there's a scene in the play which actually happened. I was so angry. This is 4 years later. And I was in my kitchen. I was down on my knees cleaning my fridge. And the only thing that was left in the bottom drawer was a cabbage. And I'm cleaning and I am swearing, you this, you that, the next thing. And suddenly from behind me, I had a cupboard, tall cupboard, 3 sections to it. I had never touched anything in the top cupboard. I'd been living there for 5 years. Suddenly from that cupboard on its own, heavy Pyrex dish flew past my ear, turned, landed in the refrigerator, bounced off the cabbage, and hit me between the eyes.
I have heard people say when someone very close to them passes, they see signs.
Lots of them. And so I went to study mediumship for 2 summers in a row in London at the Arthur Findlay School of Mediumship. And I learned so much. And I will say during the rehearsal of the play, she showed up again, Anais, with plugs falling out, with a bird pooping in Jan's teacup, and then
felt her, this beautiful, beautiful, wonderful woman.
I mean, I have to say now that, the play's up and I'm now got to take it into a new thing. The loss of her is
more, it can be more acute than ever.
It's how do you live with this? I have met some wonderful other mothers who've lost children who we have become very close to. It's a terrible thing because it's mainly because you are seen as, I don't want her around.
Well, people, exactly. There's something very difficult. But, I was thinking, Penny, as we approach this July 4th Independence Day celebration, you think about the parents who've lost children in the sacrifice that is America. Think about parents who are losing children and brothers. In one of my training sessions recently, I had a young Ukrainian man whose whole family is still in Ukraine, whose brother-in-law and sister-in-law just were killed recently in what's going on in Ukraine. You think about people who sacrifice their lives and whose parents and families endure this extraordinary loss. What I am so in awe of you about, both as a friend, as a playwright, is the ability to take these feelings and this pain and channel it into this extraordinary piece of theater. Raw, emotive, beautifully acted, beautifully written. But as we end today, Penny, you've had this extraordinary loss in your life of your beautiful, beautiful daughter in 2013. Your message, your activism, what do you hope at the end of it all, that there is not silence about what?
When something is wrong and in your gut it's wrong and you see it, you have to speak up. That's it. Athol Fugard, if I'm getting the quote right, wrote his plays to pierce the concrete walls of silence. Silence. You cannot.
Fugard, for our audience, is a very renowned South African playwright who wrote during the apartheid years, and his theatre was considered anti-apartheid activism, but did exactly that. Yes.
And you spoke about this, the young woman speaking now in the hearings. The pressure to stop her, and she came forward, and she's speaking. We have to dare to do that because, and also in terms of climate change, Anais, that's what she was studying. When you are silent and you don't take a stand, a child will die, put it that way, metaphorically and real. A child died because people refused to hear the warnings. Anais has a speech in the play. Nature is screaming warnings at us. We cannot, she says, we cannot be silent. I won't be silent. Attention must be paid.
What a beautiful way to end this interview, Penny. For people who are interested in your TED Talk, I've put it here. All you do is look up Penny Kreitzer, Penny's TED Talk. It's inspiring, it's raw, it talks about loss, and really a beautiful, beautiful TED Talk. It has already had over 78,000, correct? So please look up that TED Talk. Penny herself, please. I'm Nadia at nadiabelchik.com if you need to reach Penny, if you're interested in the play, if you're interested in hearing more. And Penny, where will people be able to see clips of the actual play or pictures of Anais or anything? Is that coming soon?
Yeah, I will put up a website on that. I'm waiting, it was filmed, and they have to. Just one thing I do want to say, because this is important. When I did it in Israel, a man called Ofer Levine, an Israeli, he heard about it from my relatives. We made a video of that reading, and he wrote to me afterwards. He said he wanted to talk to me, and I spoke to him. He said, I cannot bear what has happened to Anais. There is climate change, and I want to help you with this play. And he has helped to bring it to this play. That's one person whose heart was touched and decided, yes, he would say yes.
And then you had the extraordinary Janice Honeyman and Gina Schmuckler and Camilla Waldman. Now, is Russell Savadir?
Yes, Russell plays, amongst other wonderful, he plays the rabbi, and he nailed it. I'm very happy.
Have we mentioned everybody in this cast? Because, of course, for me, going back to South Africa, I went to theatre school, so many of these people I know and are extraordinary performers. I often think if they lived in a different country, they'd be big stars.
Well, there's also Michaela Tucker, who plays Anais. There's Mo, I'm afraid, I must apologize, I don't know her second name, but she is
the tree.
She plays the tree and many other parts. And also she told me her mother's name is Penny.
Oh, Penny.
Yeah.
Penny, you are a brave, remarkable woman. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. I hope everybody gets to see that TED Talk. Just look up Penny Kreitzer. And Penny, I know this is the beginning of a journey, and hopefully this play will be seen by many, many more people around the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.